They thought they were about to expose a fraud. Instead, they were about to expose themselves. The plan was cruelly simple, the kind of dirty trick whispered about in office gossip, but rarely carried out in real life. Yet on this damp Portland evening, at the edge of the Willamette River, where Harbor Lights Bistro glowed like a trap disguised as a promise, 3 men huddled in the shadow of a corner booth and prepared to destroy a man they barely understood. Brandon Reed checked his phone again, his thumb trembling with a mix of arrogance and dread. Ethan Walker would walk through the door at any minute, the unsuspecting hero of their twisted experiment. "He's late," Brandon muttered, though his voice cracked in a way he hoped the others wouldn't notice. "He'll show Kyle Turner," said, leaning forward with the calculating stare of someone who'd convinced himself righteousness lived on his side. Ethan Walker never breaks plans. That's his whole brand. Mr. Dependable, Mr. Compassionate, Mr. Perfect Therapist. He spat the final word like an insult. Sean Miller shifted uncomfortably, glancing at the flickering candle on their table, as though it might judge him. "He's not perfect," he said quietly. "He just looks that way compared to the rest of us." There was bitterness in his voice, the kind that grows in the shadows of other people's strengths. Brandon ignored him. Tonight wasn't the night for doubt. Tonight was the night for truth, or at least the version of truth they had decided mattered. Their plan, crafted over lukewarm coffee and resentment, had taken shape with disturbing efficiency. A fake blind date. A woman Ethan had never met. A woman who happened to be deaf. They withheld that detail on purpose, sharpening it into a blade. All Ethan had been told was that her name was Olivia, that she was in her early 30s, that she was sweet and single, and looking forward to meeting him. Nothing more. The rest was bait. Hidden near the salt shaker, a small camera. In Brandon's pocket, his phone set to record. In their minds, the image of Ethan stiffening when he realized the woman couldn't hear him of him, stammering out excuses before fleeing the restaurant of his mask of kindness finally cracking. Once they posted the footage anonymously to their industry forum, no CFO in his right mind would promote him. The golden newcomer would fall, and the natural order, meaning their seniority, would be restored. It sounded foolproof. It felt foolproof. But none of them could shake the uneasy chill that threaded through the air, as if the city itself knew something they didn't. Sean exhaled slowly. "Are we really doing this?" He tried to sound casual, but guilt had dug trenches beneath his eyes. Brandon glared at him. "Don't go soft now. Ethan played us all the year and we're just leveling the field." "Played us," Kyle scoffed. "He works harder than all of us combined. Clients love him. The exec team trusts him. That's not playing. That's outperforming." Brandon's jaw tightened, and for a moment, the truth hung naked between them, and they weren't punishing Ethan for being fake. They were punishing him for being better. But pride is louder than honesty. Pride always screams last. "Look," Brandon said, forcing calm into his voice. "We catch him slipping tonight, we save our careers. Simple as that." Kyle nodded, more to convince himself than anyone else. Sean looked away. Outside the window, the river glimmered beneath street lamps as the hour inched closer to 7. People drifted in and out of the bistro, laughing, clinking glasses, unaware that a small storm of malice was brewing in the corner booth. Brandon checked the door once more, breath hitching. Any second now, Ethan Walker would appear, gentle, composed, reliable Ethan, and the trap would spring shut. But none of them, for all their scheming, had prepared for the truth waiting just beyond the restaurant door. They had no idea that the man they were trying to break carried a history far stronger than their envy, a skill none of them could have predicted. and a heart they were about to underestimate in the most catastrophic way. Because Ethan Walker was not the man they believed him to be. He was far more. Ethan Walker stepped into Harbor Lights Bistro just after 7, carrying the uneasy weight of a man who had forgotten how to start over. The hum of the restaurant barely reached him. All he heard was the echo of Emma's small, insistent voice. From earlier that evening, Daddy, have fun. Please. He'd promised her he would try, even though every part of him trembled at the thought of stepping back into a world he had shut the door on 4 years ago. The hostess guided him to a table by the window, where the river outside glimmered beneath soft amber lights. Ethan sat adjusting his silverware, straightening his shirt, doing anything to keep his hands busy. Blind dates belonged to another lifetime. A lifetime where he still had Rachel, whose laughter once filled every corner of their home, until a sudden, merciless silence took her away. Since then, routine had been his shield. He had Emma, he had work, he had order. He didn't have room for hope. Then the restaurant door opened, and the air around him shifted. A woman stepped inside, long blonde hair, gentle posture, eyes moving across the room with careful alertness. She spoke to the hostess, but her attention remained fixed on the woman's lips, reading each shape with quiet intensity. Ethan felt recognition hit like a shock. The focused gaze, the slight delay, the measured answers. She was deaf. Olivia Brooks. The date he'd agreed to meet, and the one detail no one had told him. In the dim corner of the restaurant, Brandon, Kyle, and Sean straightened with greedy anticipation, phones discreetly angled toward him. They waited for discomfort, for irritation, for any crack in his composure. They wanted evidence, something ugly, something damning, something that would shatter the image he'd unintentionally built. But Ethan didn't crack. He rose as Olivia approached, nerves settling beneath a sudden warmth he hadn't expected. Something about her presence tugged at memories buried deep evenings spent watching his mother sign in the kitchen, light hands flowing like currents across water. ASL wasn't foreign to him. It was home. "Olivia," he said softly. She smiled, tentative yet genuine. "Yes." "You're Ethan," he nodded, pulled out her chair, and before the watching world could draw its breath, he lifted his hands and signed with fluid certainty, "Nice to meet you. Thank you for coming." Olivia went still. Shock flickered across her face, widening her eyes, parting her lips. She stared at his hands as though they were something impossible, something precious. For a heartbeat, she looked like someone who had spent years bracing for disappointment and suddenly found it wasn't coming. In the corner booth, Brandon's phone slipped against his palm. Kyle muttered in disbelief. Sean simply stared, guilt tightening his throat. But Ethan noticed none of it. His entire focus belonged to the woman sitting across from him, whose expression shifted from surprise to something fragile and luminous, like a long-locked door quietly opening. And in that suspended moment, as the river shimmered outside and the bistro lights warmed the space between them, Ethan felt a small but undeniable change inside him. For the first time in years, he wasn't surviving. He was beginning. Olivia Brooks had expected the usual script, the stiff smile, the polite nod, the flicker of discomfort, when the man realized she couldn't hear him. She had rehearsed her own responses, two gentle explanations, patient clarifications, a quiet bracing for the moment. Everything soured. After 17 disastrous blind dates, she had learned that disappointment was not an accident. It was a pattern. But Ethan Walker's hands moved with the ease of breath-shaping words in the air, with a fluency she'd only ever seen from people raised inside her world. His signs were clean, confident, warm, not the hesitant mimicry of someone who'd watched a video tutorial on the drive here. This was lived language, This was home. For a moment, Olivia forgot to breathe. "You sign." She managed her hands, trembling slightly. "You're fluent." Ethan's answering smile was gentle, touched with something almost shy. "My mother was deaf. It was the first language I learned." Shock softened into relief, deep, aching relief that loosened something in her chest she hadn't realized she'd been holding for years. She pressed her palms to the table to steady herself. Most men didn't bother to learn hello. Most men avoided her eyes when they spoke, as if unsure how to look at someone who lived in silence. But Ethan watched her closely, directly, with no pity in his gaze, only attention. Their conversation unfolded with effortless rhythm. Olivia told him about her freelance work, website, copy product guides, the occasional creative piece she wrote at midnight, when inspiration cracked open her exhaustion. Ethan asked questions that showed he was listening, truly listening, his expression shifting with every nuance she signed. And when the server approached, Ethan transitioned seamlessly, speaking aloud, while signing everything for her. Olivia blinked in surprise. No man had ever offered her that courtesy, unprompted. Most assumed she would just figure it out. He didn't hesitate. He didn't fumble. He didn't look at her as if she were fragile. He looked at her as though she were equal. For the first time in a very long time, she let her shoulders drop, tension melting away. She found herself laughing when he joked about his disastrous attempts at making Emma's school lunches, smiling when he talked about the way Portland sunsets turned the river copper, leaning forward without noticing because something about him felt impossibly safe. Meanwhile, in the corner booth, Brandon sat rigid, his recording forgotten. Kyle leaned closer, disbelief twisting his features. Sean stared at Ethan as if seeing him clearly for the first time. "He's not faking," Sean whispered. Brandon said nothing. He couldn't. At the table, Ethan watched Olivia laugh, really laugh, the kind that lit her whole face, and felt a warmth flicker through him, subtle but insistent. This wasn't the strained politeness he'd expected from himself. This was connection, honest and uncomplicated, sweeping in before he could build his usual walls. Maybe he should have questioned it. Maybe he should have been cautious. But as Olivia lifted her hands to sign another joke about her cat knocking her laptop off the counter during a Zoom call, Ethan realized something startling. He didn't want to pull back. Not from her. Not from this. The night was changing quietly, but undeniably. The trap meant to expose him was dissolving, useless, forgotten in the shadows. And as Ethan mirrored Olivia's smile, something in both of them recognized a truth neither dared voice, yet this was not the date either of them had prepared for. This was the one that might change everything. As the minutes slipped by, the conversation between Ethan and Olivia deepened in a way neither of them expected. The air around their small table seemed to warm, soften, gathering them into a quiet pocket where the city's noise faded and only their hands, their eyes, their shifting breaths mattered. Olivia asked about his daughter first. She signed it gently, as though unsure if the question carried weight he wasn't ready to lift. "You have a child." Ethan's expression changed, instantly softened, brightened, opened. "Yes, Emma, 7 years old, volcano enthusiast, animal cracker connoisseur, my entire world. You talk about her like she's magic." Olivia signed. "She is." He hesitated, then added, "Rachel was her mother." The name hung between them, light as breath, heavy as memory. Olivia watched his shoulders tense, watched the flicker of old grief pass behind his eyes, like a shadow he'd grown used to carrying. She asked nothing. She didn't need to. Ethan continued anyway, not out of obligation, but because something about Olivia's attentive stillness invited honesty. Rachel passed away 4 years ago. Heart condition no one knew about. One morning she was planning Emma's birthday. 3 days later, he stopped. His hands slowed, fingers curling slightly, as if the signs themselves hurt. Olivia leaned forward. "I'm sorry," she signed softly. Ethan nodded, swallowing. I shut everything down after that. Dating friends, anything not necessary for survival. It was just Emma and me. Stability, routine. That's all I thought I could give her. "And tonight?" Olivia asked. "Tonight is me trying to live again." She held his gaze for a long moment, and something shifted quietly between them, an acknowledgement, a shared understanding of loss in different forms. Her loneliness, his grief. Different wounds, same hollow echo. Then almost reluctantly, Olivia told her truth. "I've been on 17 blind dates," she signed with a rueful, brittle smile. 17 times I watched a man's face change when he realized I was deaf. Some left immediately. Some stayed because they thought it made them noble. Some treated me like a child. She shook her head, eyes dropping. "You're the only one who treated me like a person." Ethan felt a tightness form in his chest. Anger on her behalf, quiet and fierce. Before he could respond, a presence from across the room tugged at his attention. Brandon, Kyle, and Sean were huddled in their booth, their phones angled subtly toward him. Their faces were stiff, uneasy, confused. Suddenly, everything clicked into place. Ethan's eyes narrowed. The setup, the missing detail, the forced encouragement from Kyle earlier that week, the too casual suggestion that he should get back out there. He exhaled slowly, turning back to Olivia. "There's something you should know." She watched him waiting. "Behind us," he signed discreetly, "are 3 coworkers. They arranged this date. They've been filming." Olivia went still. Her breath hitched, barely visible, but Ethan saw it. Hurt flashed across her expression, quick, sharp, humiliating. Filming us, why he hesitated, anger tightening his jaw. "There's a promotion coming up. They wanted to catch me." He couldn't bring himself to finish the sentence. Being unkind to the deaf girl, Olivia signed her movements, clipped the pain, unmistakable. "I'm so sorry," Ethan signed. "This wasn't supposed to happen to you." "Was any of this real?" she asked, barely moving her hands. "Yes." His answer came before thought, fierce and immediate. Everything between us tonight was real. Olivia searched his face, looking for hesitation, for deception, for the faintest crack in sincerity. She found none. And just like that, her expression softened. Fragile hope flickered through her eyes, faint but alive. Ethan leaned closer, signing slowly, carefully, as if shaping something precious. "If you'll let me, I'd like to see you again. Not because of them. Because of you." Silence stretched between them, a breath held by the universe. Then Olivia's hands lifted, uncertain, trembling, but resolute. "I'd like that too." And beneath the dim lights of a riverside bistro with 3 stunned saboteurs staring from the shadows, something unexpected and delicate took root. Not in spite of the trap set for them, but in the quiet space where they chose to rise above it. Saturday morning arrived with the gentle chaos of a home that belonged to a 7-year-old. Ethan flipped pancakes while Emma sat cross-legged at the kitchen table, hair sticking out in triumphant curls that refused to be tamed. She swung her feet beneath the chair, humming to herself between bites of fruit. Bug Ethan said, sliding a golden pancake onto her plate, "I need to tell you something." Emma looked up, her brown eyes bright with curiosity. "What did you burn this one again?" He snorted. "Only a little." Then his voice softened. "Remember how I went on that date last night?" Emma's expression sharpened instantly, like a tiny detective ready for a fresh case. "The one where you looked nervous and kept fixing your collar." That one, Ethan laughed, rubbing the back of his neck. Well, I met someone. Someone really kind. And I might see her again tomorrow. Emma's fork froze midair. Tomorrow, here. Ethan watched her closely. Her name is Olivia. And there's something important about her. She's deaf, which means she can't hear us the way you and I hear. She talks with her hands. Emma blinked, processing, like Grandma used to. A wave of warmth swept through Ethan. Yes, he said quietly. Exactly like Grandma. Emma straightened, excitement building. Can I learn, like right now I want to say something cool. Teach me how to say volcanoes are awesome. Ethan laughed, the sound light and unguarded. We'll practice. By afternoon, the house had been cleaned twice, the couch cushions violently rearranged, and Emma had changed outfits 3 times before deciding on her sparkly purple t-shirt, the one she saved for important visitors. The cat, unimpressed with the commotion, glared from atop the bookshelf. When the doorbell rang at 2, Emma bolted toward it with the force of a very small hurricane. Emma, wait, too late. She yanked the door open. Olivia stood on the porch in jeans and a soft yellow sweater, sunlight warming her hair. She held a small bag in her hands. Cookies, it would turn out, and when she saw Emma, her smile lit her whole face. Emma froze for half a heartbeat, then lifted her hands, performing the shaky signs Ethan had taught her. Hello. Nice to meet you. Her movements were clumsy, earnest, full of hope. Olivia's breath caught. Tears gathered instantly, surprising even her. She crouched to Emma's level, signing slowly. Hi, Emma. Your dad has told me so much about you. I heard you're a volcano expert. Emma squealed and then remembered to turn to Ethan for translation. When he signed it back to her, she practically levitated. Want to see my books? And just like that, the afternoon unfolded as though it had been waiting for them. Emma dragged Olivia to her room to show every volcano illustration she'd ever made. Olivia listened with full attention, signing questions, laughing at Emma's dramatic explanations. Ethan followed behind, translating when needed, watching his daughter bloom under Olivia's gentle interest. Later, they gathered in the kitchen for cookies and milk. Emma pointed at random objects, eager to learn more signs. Table, cookie, cat, window. When she accidentally signed bathroom instead of butterfly, the 3 of them burst into helpless laughter, pure, ringing, contagious. When Emma ran off to get her rock collection, Olivia turned to Ethan. Her hands moved slowly, full of emotion she couldn't hide. She's incredible. Ethan looked down, overwhelmed. I'm trying my best, he murmured, though guilt always clung to the edges of his voice. Some days I feel like I'm one forgotten permission slip away from ruining everything. Olivia shook her head, firm and sincere. No, she's confident, curious, kind. That doesn't happen by accident. That's you. For the first time in years, Ethan didn't try to deflect the compliment. He let it land, let it settle, let it fill a place inside him that grief had hollowed out. Emma raced back into the kitchen, signing what she thought meant friend, but actually meant cheese. Olivia bit her lip, trying not to laugh. Ethan's eyes met hers, warm and bright, in a way she hadn't seen before. And in that small, ordinary kitchen, surrounded by cookies, half-learned signs, and a child's exuberant joy, a truth settled quietly into place. This wasn't the start of something fragile. It was something that already felt like home. Monday arrived colder than it should have, the kind of morning where the sky felt heavy and the city moved slower, as if instinctively bracing for what was coming. Ethan stepped into the office lobby with a calm he did not fully feel, greeting the front desk staff, adjusting the strap of his bag, steadying the quiet storm inside his chest. He wasn't angry anymore, not in the sharp, explosive way he'd been Friday night. His anger had cooled, settled into something clearer, steadier resolution. When he pushed open the break room door, he found them exactly as he expected, Brandon, Kyle, and Sean huddled near the coffee machine, shoulders hunched, eyes shadowed. They looked nothing like the men who had smirked in the dark corner of Harbor Lights Bistro. They looked like people who had been awake all weekend replaying their choices. Sean spotted him first. He flinched. Kyle's face lost its color. Brandon tried to stand straighter, but even his pride seemed to sag. "Ethan," Brandon said, voice thin. "We need to talk." Ethan set his bag down with deliberate calm. "Yes," he said quietly. "You do." The silence that followed was brutal. Kyle rubbed the back of his neck, unable to meet Ethan's eyes. Sean swallowed his guilt written in the tremble of his hands. Brandon finally exhaled the sound harsh, like air escaping a collapsing structure. "We messed up," Brandon said, his voice breaking. "We messed up badly." Sean nodded quickly, words tumbling out. "We thought God I don't even know anymore. Maybe we convinced ourselves you weren't real. That no one could do the work you do, be the person you are without performing. So you decided to test me." Ethan's voice was calm, but the disappointment beneath it hit harder than anger. Kyle finally looked up. "Yes. And we were wrong. Completely. Awfully wrong." Brandon reached for his phone as if needing to reveal the worst part before he lost the courage. "We watched the whole date," he admitted, voice low. "We watched you treat her with more respect than any of us have shown anyone in months. We saw you sign fluently, naturally. We saw her open up to you. We saw how real it all was. And He faltered. Shame swallowed the rest. Sean took over. "We went to Harris this morning, before you got here. We told him everything. The setup, the filming, the intention. We showed him the video and then deleted it. He's handling our disciplinary actions." Kyle stepped forward slightly. "But we're not here because he told us to apologize. We're here because we needed to say it to you directly. What we did to you was cruel. What we did to Olivia was unforgivable." Ethan's jaw tightened. Hearing Olivia's name spoken with remorse cut deeper than he expected. "The saddest thing," he said slowly, "is that none of this had to happen. If you'd wanted to talk to me, really talk, we could have figured out whatever resentment or fear you were carrying. But instead, you made her part of a trap she never deserved." Brandon blinked hard, grief settling in his expression. "You're right," he whispered. "And nothing we say makes it okay. We just hope you'll believe we're trying to fix what we can." Ethan studied them for a long, silent moment. These were men who had plotted to ruin him. Men who had looked straight into Olivia's life and seen only a weapon. Men who, for the first time in a year, looked honest. "I appreciate you coming forward," he said at last. "It doesn't erase what you did, but it matters." He picked up his bag, turning toward the door. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have actual work to do." The break room remained silent as he walked out, the three men left behind to absorb the weight of what they had nearly destroyed. Hours later, a message from the CFO confirmed what had already been decided. Ethan would step into the position of head therapist in 2 weeks' hire, pay a new office with a window overlooking downtown, and the trust of the leadership team. But that wasn't what made something tighten warmly in his chest. It was the text waiting on his phone when he stepped into the hallway. "Congratulations. Emma and I are so proud of you. Dinner tonight, I'll bring the pizza without pineapple." Olivia Ethan closed his eyes, breathing in the quiet victory, not the job, not the title, but the fact that after everything, she was still there. Still choosing him. Still choosing this. 6 months slipped by with the quiet certainty of something growing exactly where it was meant to be. Harbor Lights Bistro, once the stage of a cruel setup, had transformed into the place Ethan, Olivia, and Emma returned to again and again birthdays. Small victories, tired evenings that needed a spark. The staff knew their usual table by the window. Emma claimed the middle seat every time, declaring it the best spot for signing practice, which she said with such authority that no one argued. On a late summer evening, the three of them sat together beneath the warm glow of string lights, and the river moving lazily beyond the glass. Emma, now signing with impressive confidence, lifted her hands in earnest determination. Family, she signed, her little fingers working carefully through the shape. Did I do it right almost? Olivia signed, smiling as she gently adjusted Emma's wrists, guiding the movement like a secret choreography. There. Perfect. Emma beamed, cheeks dimpling, proud enough to glow. Ethan watched them with a fullness in his chest he never quite found the words for. This wasn't the cautious, wounded man who'd walked into the bistro months earlier. This was someone rebuilt from the inside out, steadier, softer, and stronger in ways he hadn't expected. Work had changed too. Ethan's new office overlooked a sprawl of treetops, a reminder that even in the heart of the city, something green and hopeful always fought its way through. He led his team with quiet clarity, surprising even the skeptics, many of whom had apologized in their own awkward, halting ways. The office felt different now, less tense. Maybe because he finally felt worthy of the space he held. But the biggest shift belonged to Olivia. One afternoon, she arrived at dinner buzzing with an excitement she tried and failed to hide. When they settled into their usual table, she leaned toward Ethan, her hands moving with barely contained thrill. I got a big client today. 6-month contract. They want to meet in person, so I'm taking an office downtown. Ethan's smile rose instantly. That's incredible. It's terrifying, Olivia confessed, her fingers hesitating midair. I've been working from home for years. It felt safe, predictable. But now I don't want to hide anymore. Ethan understood that more deeply than she realized. He reached across the table, not touching her, but close enough that she felt the anchor of his presence. I'm proud of you, he signed. Olivia exhaled tension, loosening from her shoulders. She hadn't told him everything, how before him she'd been shrinking into herself for years, pulling back from a world that had made her feel like an inconvenience. How she'd nearly convinced herself solitude was safer than being misunderstood. But she didn't need to explain it. He seemed to see it anyway. Can you help me move furniture when I set it up? She signed playfully. Ethan lifted an eyebrow. Oh, is this guy single? Absolutely not, she signed with a slow, teasing grin. He's very taken by a widower's daughter who shows him volcano drawings and a woman who can't believe she almost gave up on people. At that exact moment, Emma returned from the restroom, hands already flying through the air. Are you two being mushy again? They burst into laughter, and Olivia ruffled Emma's hair, signing dramatically, very mushy. Is that okay? Emma pretended to consider it with grave seriousness. I guess it's okay, she signed, but only because she's nice, and because she hates pineapple pizza. A valid requirement, Ethan signed solemnly. As the evening waned, they walked out into the warm dusk. Emma climbed onto Ethan's shoulders, balancing like a victorious explorer, while Olivia walked beside them, her hand finding Ethan's with the ease of someone who no longer questioned whether she belonged there. She fit effortlessly, as natural as breath. Cars drifted past. People laughed on patios. The world moved with its usual indifferent rhythm. But the little trio walking home along the riverside felt like something whole, something built not from perfection, but from healing courage and the small, stubborn decision to stay. Months ago, Ethan had thought he'd run out of stories worth living. Olivia had thought she'd run out of chances worth taking. Emma had simply hoped her dad would smile more. And here they were, 3 lives once frayed at the edges, now stitching themselves together into something steady and bright. A family, not official, not yet, but real in every way that mattered. 1 year and 3 months after their first meeting, Ethan Walker stood in front of the mirror, tightening a navy blue tie with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. Beside him, Emma adjusted her ocean blue dress for the 5th time, her curls bouncing with excitement. "Dad," she said, narrowing her eyes, "why do we look so fancy? It's just dinner." Ethan forced a calm breath. "It's a special dinner, Bug." She studied him as only a 7-year-old could, unfiltered, amused, and suspicious. "Special like you're going to ask Olivia something important." He almost dropped the tie. "Eat your crackers." Emma grinned, knowing she'd hit the mark. On the drive across Portland, Ethan kept one hand on the wheel and one hand pressed over the small velvet box in his jacket. It felt impossibly heavy, like the weight of everything he had survived and everything he hoped for. Harbor Lights Bistro glowed warm by the river, the same place where a cruel setup had transformed into the start of something real. Tonight he was returning to close the circle. Olivia was already seated at their usual table, wearing a soft gray dress that made her look lit from within. When she saw Ethan and Emma, her whole face brightened, and Ethan felt something inside him settle, as if the world had finally aligned. Dinner unfolded, gently shared bread, quiet laughs, Emma's overexcited retelling of a school science project. Ethan watched Olivia's eyes follow Emma's every gesture, watched Emma sign more fluently than she had the week before, watched a family quietly, naturally, effortlessly exist. Halfway through the meal, he felt the moment arrive. His phone buzzed a small planned signal. He leaned toward Emma. Ready, Emma practically levitated from her chair. She walked around the table and stopped in front of Olivia, her little hands trembling. "Olivia," she signed, "may I ask you something important?" Olivia blinked, surprised but smiling. "Of course." Emma took a deep breath, then signed with slow, careful precision. "Would you like to be part of our family, officially forever?" Olivia's eyes widened, tears gathering instantly. She looked up and saw Ethan rising from his chair. He walked toward her, heart hammering, and sank onto one knee. The restaurant blurred into soft light as he opened the velvet box. "Olivia Brooks," he signed, hands shaking. "You came into my life when I thought I had nothing left to give. You loved Emma without hesitation. You saw me in ways I didn't know I needed to be seen. You taught us that love doesn't erase loss, it honors it. I'm not asking you to complete us. We are not incomplete. But I am asking you to choose us. Every day. The way you've been choosing us for more than a year. Will you marry me?" Olivia covered her mouth, tears streaking down her cheeks. For a moment, she couldn't move. Then she lifted her hands, trembling but sure. "Yes, yes, yes." Applause rippled through the bistro. Emma squealed and threw her arms around both of them, nearly knocking Ethan over. He slipped the ring onto Olivia's finger hands, shaking with joy he couldn't contain. And she pulled him into a kiss that made the entire room blur into light. 3 months later, Olivia stood in a bridal boutique, turning in a lace-sleeved gown that shimmered just enough for Emma's approval. Her phone buzzed with a message. "Emma wants to confirm your dress has sparkles. Also, I love you, and I miss you. And 3 weeks feels too long." Olivia laughed, wiping a tear before replying, "Tell her the lace sparkles. and I love you more. That evening, she returned to the home she had moved into 2 months before. A home now cluttered with Emma's drawings, Ethan's books, and the quiet confidence of belonging. They curled up on the couch, wrapped in blankets, the cat draped across all three of them like a sleepy guardian, while a volcano documentary droned softly on. Ethan's fingers brushed hers. Emma leaned against Olivia's shoulder. The house felt whole. The wedding would make it official. But the truth was simple, undeniable, and older than any ceremony. The moment Ethan signed, "It's wonderful to meet you," they had already become a family. In the end, Ethan and Olivia's story reminds us of a truth often forgotten. Real connection isn't built on perfection, timing, or circumstance. It's built on courage. The courage to see beyond assumptions, the courage to show up with sincerity, and the courage to choose kindness even when no one is watching. As a relationship specialist might say, love thrives, not in grand gestures, but in the everyday choices that reveal who we are when the world expects less. If this journey moved, you let it linger. Let it shape the way you listen, the way you look at others, and the way you allow yourself to be seen. And if you'd like more stories that carry heart healing and hope, remember to like the video and subscribe. Your support helps these human moments reach those who need them most. Before you go, drop a short comment below. Choose love.